Okay, today I want to tackle a very important question, and that is, can we overcome our need to be loved and respected? So I want to lay a little bit of groundwork where I'm coming from first, and I'm calling this an IC investigation. So let's talk about what the IC is, first of all, so you get a look at where I'm coming from. So just so you know, a little background on me. I am a hardcore drop dead alcoholic. For 8 years, I went in and out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, probably been to over a thousand meetings. I went in and out of detoxes 16 times. I could not stop drinking to save my life, no matter what. And it was just so hard because I constantly had this voice inside my head, even though I wanted nothing more than anything on the planet to quit drinking. I had this voice constantly yelling at me, "You're no good. You're not loved. You're a piece of shit. You're not respected. Now drink, 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 drink." Okay, what was going on at that time is I believed I live by the default perspective that we kind of all do as humans before we start to think about it, is where all the thoughts and all the emotions and all the actions I carried out were who I was. All those toxic thoughts and all those toxic emotions were myself. So I had this battle over here. I'm looking on the left side of this diagram here, where I was saying I never want to drink again and I'm an okay person. Well, there's this other thing inside of me yelling, "You're a piece of shit. You need to drink. That's the only way to get out of this hell, this scary ass world that you live in. Drink, 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 drink." Until I was doing a lot of research because I didn't want to drink in what was going on inside my head. And I'm not a scientist, I'm an engineer, but I'm able to take scientific topics and simplify them to make or to make products that we as laymen, as regular humans, can use. So I've come up with this what I call the IC perspective. It's the instinctual core perspective, where instead of viewing ourselves as all the thoughts and all the emotions inside our head, we look at ourselves, and this is a very simplified version of what a lot of the scientists from a lot of the different perspectives were saying, is that there's three different things in this three subset look, is that there's the conscious where we start to look at ourselves from a different perspective. We are no longer all the thoughts and all the emotions. Rather, we are our consciousness, that thing inside our heads that knows that it's us resting inside our heads, the awareness behind the awareness, along with our conscious brain, the brain that we are able to actively engage. And then there is this vast subconsciousness. And I like to consider this more like along in terms of behavioral economics, what they call the system one brain, because the subconscious brain has 200 years of different definitions as it developed through psychology, while the system one brain is a much more simplified look at this brain that's running, kind of got us on autopilot 90% of the time. And it's kind of the default mode, what we're going to be doing if we're not thinking about what we're going to be doing. And that's I'm going to refer to it as the subconscious because a lot more people are familiar with that. But then there's this separate actor, like this separate intelligence that's injecting things into the subconscious brain, which I call the instinctual core, which is a culmination of all our survival instincts that uses this subconscious brain as its functioning brain. Now, we are able to condition the subconscious brain. And once you start to look at things from this perspective, is when I started to look at it from this perspective, I saw clearly that there was reasons that all right, let's take a step back. Why don't why would we want to separate from this instinctual core? Because it's made up of its agenda is our survival. It's got a bunch of survival instincts written into it. Well, that's because it wasn't made for this world. It was made for a prehistoric world, a world of about 30,000 years ago, when our tribe consisted of about 100 people. Our world consisted of about 100 square miles. And there were real immediate threats everywhere. And it still sees that world today. But now it's totally confused because our tribe has grown to 8 billion people. Our world has grown to the whole globe, and it's seen these obscure threats everywhere. So what it's looking for are immediate threats to our survival, and it sees all those things across the entire globe as real threats to our survival. So it's seen all these things in real time and making us live in this fear. And it's also seen that there's all these people doing better than us. It doesn't look at all the billions of people doing worse than us. It looks at people doing better than us and says, you've got to climb to the top of that pecking order. So it's never satisfied with where we're at in our lives. So when I started looking at things through this lens and seeing that I see is bullshit, it's trying to get me to survive, but it's doing it in a way, setting me up in impossible traps and making a whole bunch of absolutely bullshit fears. I decided to separate from it, and when I did that, I never felt the need to drink again. And I can get into that story, but I'm not. That's not what I'm here today to do today. I want to talk about this need for love and respect that we all have. Okay, so and to do that, I'm going to show you the user's guide to, and I worked for years on this, but I'm finally starting to talk about it. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to hit the emotional and the importance of this. But the instinctual core, um, okay, let me explain the user's guide real quick. This is the instinctual core. This is us. The instinctual core wants three things out of us: to destroy survival threats, avoid survival threats, and attain survival treats. And it doesn't do that just on the immediate, just on running away from the saber-toothed tigers and making sure we secure food for the night, but it does it on many layers. There are many layers because we have a very sophisticated instinctual core as a very sophisticated species, where it sees threats on the physiological, the safety, belonging. And what the belonging is, it's like there is a need, a need to belong, a need to be loved, not because the IC cares about us being loved, because if you weren't loved in 30,000 years ago by your tribe, by your parents, by your people, you were kicked out, you were dead, you were alone. If you didn't have a place in the pecking, if you didn't know your place in the pecking order and you didn't work and stay in your place in the pecking order and work to slowly move up that pecking order, you get tossed out of the pecking order. Or if you try to go against someone higher in the pecking order, they could go ahead and just kill you, or you were seen as useless to the tribe, you would be thrown out and you die. So it needs it needs to belong, and it needs to be respected, and needs to know its place in the pecking order, not because it needs to know those things, because it needs that to survive. So it continues to do that in this world today, but this world is totally different. And these needs are what are just throwing us way out of whack. Okay, so this is where my alcoholism began, as it slowly, as it broke me, made me financially bankrupt, uh, and slowly devolved into a need, a physiological need, where it became more and more important than food, more important than water, more important than breathing. So it kind of creeped its way down, but it started here, and it started with this need for respect. So like I would not live my life worrying about my own happiness. I lived my life forced by the instinctual core to try and fit into place by the demands that said to get these people to like you, to get these people to respect you, and these judgments to say, you're at the bottom of the pecking order, you're a piece of shit, now try and move your way up. So it was constantly forcing me to attain the treat of being liked, or in certain situations it just couldn't handle, I would run away. Like the time in first grade where I was supposed to get on stage and recite "Ba Ba Black Sheep" in front of about 100 people, and the instinctual core said, "No fucking way are you getting up on that stage. That is death. You will make a fool of yourself in front of your tribe, and that will cause your death." Like, and I literally when they call my name, I ran out of the schoolyard, jumped a old crickety fence, swam across a canal, and ran all the way home at the age of 6. All those things could have caused my death a lot more likely than stepping on stage, but that's how the instinctual core works. It doesn't understand the difference. So once I realized what was going on, this situation, and of course, there was always a way to resolve this situation at which I discovered at the age of 15. And it wasn't by actually raising my position in the pecking order. It wasn't by all of a sudden becoming loved. It was by a short circuiting the system with alcohol. Alcohol was not the problem. Alcohol was the solution that I lived in. Okay, but we're not getting into that today. We're getting into these things. It's like and I feel that I had this need to be loved and this need to belong. It was kind of genetically coded, right? But and I didn't have a bad childhood. My parents weren't mean or abusive, but they had just moved from Argentina. We were came over totally broke. So my parents, although they were loving, my dad was constantly gone at work, very very loving father, but I didn't he didn't have any friends. All his life was survival. And my mom the same. She grew up in a world in Argentina as a missionary child where her life was survival. So she didn't know how to manage the emotions and inspirational chats to cope with this American world. So although they were both loving, um, my need the instinctual core had to belong and to fit into my place in the pecking order, I I was never trained at, and I never received it at home, I guess. Um, Again, not faulting anyone, but I know there's a lot of people out there. So, nonetheless, I was hijacked, right? And once I realized that I was hijacked in this way because his instinctual core needed this love and needed this belonging, needed this respect, I realized, you know what? It's going about it all the wrong way. It's going about it by sending me fear and demands and cravings to be loved, and that wasn't the right way to get love at all. So I didn't say, okay. First, I realized I don't need to be loved, or I don't need to be respected to survive. But I could, if I want that, I could start working at it in a different way, which is when I started moving my whole life over to the layers of human happiness. So instead of, let me unselect that. And so instead of worrying ever, so I was, I had major social anxiety, which was cured by alcohol. So instead of worrying, I just stopped. I'm like, hey, I am good enough. I'm just fine who I am. And instead of ever worrying if I fit in a social environment, I just went in and didn't and dropped the pecking order, dropped the need to be loved, and just started becoming intrigued about a certain social situation. And this can apply in every area of life, but let me just talk about social interaction. I can now walk into a party, which I could never do to before, unless I was drunk, of course, and start being intrigued. Hey, who are these people? Let me learn. Let me meet someone new, and I can appreciate them just for being a fellow member of the human species, and I can engage with them and want to learn more about them. And then this helps me for purpose of self-improvement because I sucked at social interaction, and an overall purpose of maybe, hey, maybe I can offer them some advice. So what used to be a scary ass interaction became this thing that was interactions that were full of purpose. And I didn't have to do this all the time, but I just knew when I acted in this way, all that stuff that the instinctual core needed, that need to belong and that need to be respected, took care of itself. When I stopped worrying so fucking much, stopped being controlled by the instinctual core, and start to live up here, people just started to like me, and I felt comfortable being in there. I was no longer running from a social interaction, and I was no longer worried about attaining the treat of someone liking me at all. I started living through human external reaction. I just made these icons. I could that needs a little work, but through the experience of life, just engaging in what I was doing. Okay, now that's how I totally flipped my life. No longer, and and I do that in every area of my life, not just social interaction with my hobbies, with my career, with with everything. I work through these layers, and it makes me happier. So the question is that I proposed in the beginning: can we get rid of that need for love and need for respect? And I know everyone's situation is totally different. Okay, so if you're kind of sensing what I'm putting down here, you might be in a totally different situation. And since I had the good fortune of at least, um, although we never said I love you to each other, I knew that I was loved, and I was comforted. I just didn't receive it in abundance, didn't wasn't shown how to get along in this world. But there's others of you out there that have abusive parents where they specifically tell you you are not loved, you are not good enough, or in the pecking order, you are a piece of shit. And I'm wondering, can you guys do what I did on at a much higher level? Because if I was told over and over again I'm a piece of shit, would I have still been able to override it? I think so, because it had gotten so bad that it totally consumed my life to the point of death. So I had to override it, right? But I want people out there to come to me and tell me, once they start to understand the IC solution, are you able to override it too? I had definitely a genetic component to my fear and anxiety, and a nature would be the genetic component, and a nurture component. But the nurture was not a direct, you're a piece of shit, I don't love you, you're no good. It was just two loving parents that didn't have the time to give that nurture or didn't know how to give that nurture. So I want, I dare you, if you're in that other boat that had both the nature, the genetic component towards anxiety, or even if you didn't have that, if that was forced upon you by the nurture component before you started to gain your own decisions, if you were already forced into a position that said you're not loved, and and that instinctual core needs that love, if you're able to do this same flip that I was and start saying, you know what? I see that it's the instinctual core and not me that needs that love. The instinctual core needs it to survive. But I'm going to override it and say, fuck it. I don't need that love. But I can go ahead and get that love if I go out into the world and start living up here. Because I've ran into so many people, because I've been in thousands of AA meetings, and a lot of people, really good people, lived in this arena with me, but in worse situations where there was verbal, physical, sexual abuse. And I want to know, can it be overridden at this level? Because the AA approach of uh, turning over yourselves, because basically the AA approach to me says, step one says, okay, you're a piece of shit, you can't manage your life, you got to turn it over to a higher power. And that's great for people that can turn over their lives to a higher power, but we all can't do that, no matter how hard we try. What we're doing here at the IC Solution is realizing that us, with the IC perspective, our consciousness and our conscious brain are not the piece of shit, are not the problem. It is the IC telling us what we're lacking. And if we realize it's only telling us that because it needs that to survive, but we don't actually need our parents' love to survive. We can go out and find that love. We can find a new family. We can find new tribes. We can find it if we start living our lives up here. Okay, I told you, I'm just getting started. This is day 22 of me talking about these big issues. and I don't know if it hit home, but it's the best I can do for now. I'm going to continue to put out a couple videos a day, and this is one of the first ones where I've really hit some hard topics. But if you liked it or didn't like it, give me a like because I'm going to keep on doing it until I get the points across, until I can finally really start helping people. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be putting out a couple of videos each day. But more importantly, if you kind of see what the IC solution is about, where you start to look at yourself through a different perspective, where you are that consciousness. And then there's this subconscious brain that everything in there is up for question. It could have been put there by the IC and false conditioning in your upbringing or anywhere along the way. And you're allowed to make an overriding decision to say anything that's put there, whether it be anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, addictions. If you didn't put them there, it was the IC and outside influences that did. You're allowed to override them and become in charge of what's going to be there. Once you start to see that you can condition it and you can start to retrain that IC to live in this world and behave in a way and start living your life through the layers of human happiness. Okay, that's all I got. I hope that made sense. I would love to discuss this. We are day 22. I'm having my IC investigative meetups by myself because I'm just launching to this world. I've been preparing this for many years, but I'm finally getting the courage to launch it to the world. Day 22, the IC investigation meetups are happening, but I'm the one showing up, and I can't wait to start talking to a lot of you about this. I've got to, by doing this approach, constantly making these videos, I expect by 3 months, I'll have 10 people coming to the meetings, 6 months, 100 people, a year, 1,000 people. And I've already built it out because I've spent so much time building it out. And each year after that, another zero on the end, because I believe, I know it saved my life, and I know this solution is going to be the right niche for a lot of you out there that are suffering like I was. Okay, I'm out. Nice talking to you.